This is the Film File, the film show for film geeks by film geeks. Atomic batteries to power, turbines to speed. Hello and welcome to this week's Film File. Not only just the film show for film geeks by film geeks, but a moment where we have entered the multiverse of madness. We are operating on no cylinders, even with our atomic batteries to speed. I'm Lee Ford.
I'm Andy Meakin.
It's going to be one of those shows, sometimes in this particular part of our very own multiverse, it just starts. We start
This
recording
always
and
happens
madness starts.
when we do one of these early morning recordings. We are both still in a dreamlike state at this time of day.
Yeah.
And this is when the recordings get a bit silly. It does mean more complications for me on the edit side because I need to try to make it not silly. But it does occasionally mean that when it comes to the video bits getting put out, you get some juicy treats. And there might be some juicy treats today.
Yeah. So just to give you a little bit of context, we record this a couple of days before you hear it. And we always have to accommodate each other's lives. You know, we do this for free, unless you're a sponsor out there, you want to get involved, please get in touch now. We've got one called Super Tired that we should be introducing any day now.
Super tired.
And Andy has got his own little tale. I played a show last night with my my tribute band. It was a late finish and got back. So I'm a bit croaky, having sang for an hour and a half, and just a little bit still bleary-eyed. That's my excuse. Andy, what's yours?
So, as we've been hinting at over the past couple of weeks, Andy's going to be, and those who follow the Twitter feed will know a bit more about this because I posted out on there. Andy is relocating for a few months.
Yeah.
I am going down south to Banbury to help with the opening of a brand new cinema there.
Wow.
Where I'm going to be stationed for the next 3 months to help set up the team, help set up the way that it runs, and get them hitting the ground running. It's a huge undertaking. It's a change to my lifestyle. I mean, my family are still going to be living in Sheffield, so I'm going to be popping backwards and forwards. But as a result, I'm going down this afternoon. So we're getting this recorded quite early today so that I can transfer it over to my laptop and then get the show edited whilst I'm down there over the next couple of days.
Well, you're going down by train, aren't you?
Yeah,
today?
So it's about 3 hours, 3.5 hours.
There you go.
Journey.
By the time you've got there, the show will be complete. Because I always find the one thing I do like about train travel is the ability to work. And if they weren't so darn expensive,
yeah,
and if they weren't so darn well, the last train that I got was a nightmare scenario, not being able to get the seat that I'd booked because they'd not put enough carriages on, but that's another story for another time. But I generally quite enjoy getting the train. If I can get the opportunity, I'll jump on and make the most of it.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I do love a good train journey. I like to relax, and you can just disappear into your own world and do your own thing. But yeah, obviously, because I'm going down to Banbury as of today, I worked my last shift for the time being with the guys at Sheffield the other day. And at the risk of having that's what she said, it was harder than I thought.
You were quite emotional. I saw your comments on Twitter, and well, at least you're not going forever. That's the good thing. I mean, it's 3 months and it will fly by. And as I promised, no, actually threatened, I'm going to come down and see you at some point because I don't really know Banbury, but I'm hoping that we'll pick up some new listeners in Banbury as they become part of the Film File family.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to come down and spend a day with you when we get the chance.
Yeah, that my last shift was. The day felt weird, knowing that it would be the last time that I'd be working there for about 3 months. And when it came to leaving, and like I went and said like farewell to all the team, and then went outside and chatted to Scott, who I've known for years.
Scott, contributor to the show occasionally,
Yep.
or certainly in the early days when we were a trio, the Tender Trio.
And that was the point at which I could just feel myself. I could feel myself breaking emotionally, and it just like, I'm gonna. I realised how much I'm gonna miss those guys. I posted a message on the internal communications staff team page, to just say, as I sit on the bus at the moment for the last time for the last 3 months, for the next 3 months, it really makes me realise what I'm leaving behind. You guys are all awesome, and I love working with you. I love the building. I think that they're a great team. I'll miss all the fun. I'll miss all the silliness, all the chats, the googly eyes that we stick around the building
I
to
have
have a
seen
laugh,
those.
and the little challenges. But I then posted like a little image of a quote that perfectly summed it up, and it's from Winnie the Pooh, A.A. Milne. How lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard. And it
Brilliant.
really put
Lovely.
it all into context that, it made me realise how much I love the people that I work with by how much it hurt, even though it's only for 3 months, to say
Yeah,
farewell to them.
you'll be back. It's interesting. You've just raised a key point. So most listeners who don't know me or yourself personally will have picked up bits of information about our lives. So by normal standards, I'm a filmmaker. But during the pandemic, I was supposed to finish a film that I'd been shooting for 2 years, and pandemic knocked it for 6, and knocked another project that I was working on for 6 as well. So it wasn't a financial choice. It was about boredom. I decided I
Yeah.
needed something to do. I was going stir crazy. So because my fallback is always doing a bit of teaching, I
Yeah.
jumped to a teaching a film course, which I've absolutely, I won't say adored all the time. It's been a struggle. It's been a mental challenge. There's a lot of work, but I promised when I did it that I would see the group that I was teaching from first years through to finishing their exams, and now that comes to an end. I've built up relationships, and it just made me think I'm going to say goodbye to people whose hopefully I've had some influence on their lives, and I think that's going to be quite hard. I'm a bit like you.
Mm.
I do get emotional. Like I cried at Spider-Man 3. I cried at Spider-Man 3 not because it was any good. It didn't. It was sad. It was just bloody awful. Um, but it just I just get a little bit emotional. So I was talking to my class, going, it's nearly this journey that we've been on is nearly done, and this will be probably the end for my teaching right now. And I was getting all choked up, and they didn't give a toss. And they were, oh yeah, good on you, thanks. And I was like, here's me choking up, giving this heartfelt speech. But I think you probably did it better by quoting Winnie the Pooh, which I think when anybody quotes Winnie the Pooh, you do get that little lump in your
Yeah.
throat.
Winnie the Pooh is filled with life lessons.
Yeah,
And I urge everyone who's never read through all of the Winnie the Pooh stories to go and buy them. You
yeah, they're
deserve
beautiful.
it. You
Yeah,
deserve it. They are beautiful. They may be children's books, but they are
but they're
so beautifully
philosophical.
written.
They're
Yeah.
incredibly philosophical. So, what does that mean for the show? Well, for the show, we will be back. As Andy said, we're figuring it out. We'll be back next week, no matter what. We've got a couple of
Yeah.
surprises in store for you. But
It's for
ultimately,
it's
once,
for us to stress about. It's for us to stress about in the
yeah,
background. For you
as long
guys
as
out
you're
there who
there,
tune in, you just
we'll be
keep
there.
tuning in and see
Yeah.
what we put out, because
Remember, tell your friends.
we will be keeping you up to date. We will be occasionally digging into the archives for some favourite memories. But as we see new films, we will find a way to log on with me on a Wi-Fi, like hotel Wi-Fi, and
It'll take
record
6
our
hours to
thoughts and
do an hour
conversations.
show.
Well, that's about the norm at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
be
it is.
honest.
It is this morning.
And we will keep bringing you our questions of the week on Twitter.
Yes. And talking of which is a fantastic segue, Andy.
See, I'm perfect at this, aren't I?
Perfect. You're getting, after 120 episodes, so you should be. So we set every week a Twitter question challenge, and this week's challenge was all about the idea of, if you had the opportunity to reboot a TV series or do a big screen version of that series, what TV series from your past do you think deserves to move onto the big screen? Now, of course, Star Trek was hugely successful moving to
Yes.
the big screen. There were films like Starsky and Hutch, which weren't. 21 Jump Street was. Sometimes it's a success. Sometimes it's a Charlie's Angels.
Yeah.
So what choices did you come up with? Now, I said on the show, The $6 Million Man, because I think in this day and age, it would be $6 billion Man. And to do it straight and to do it more like the original pilot and more like the original book. But what about wonderful, very beautiful looking followers said this week?
So Anna Kerry on Twitter suggested Hogan's Heroes, the 60s
Yeah.
POW
You know, I'm
sitcom.
so surprised that one's not been done.
Yeah, it's one of them that as soon as like that tweet came through, I was just like, wow, I'd completely forgotten about that, but that makes perfect sense. I think that could work a charm.
Yeah.
Stephen Young sent me a message and suggested Gargoyles, the Disney animated series, which had
Didn't
Keith
see that.
David as the voice of Goliath. It was a cracking series, and I think it's a great choice. He'd like to see it on the big screen, and he wants it in a new digital 2D mixed with deep canvas kind of technology. So
Okay.
I think it could look beautiful. And it was one of those animated shows of the 90s that really had like a good depth to the story running through each season.
I know it by reputation only.
Steely Steve, aka old friend of the show, Steve Clark, person who I stole the name film file from, um, wants Battle of the Planets live action, which we've had a live action of sorts about 9-10 years ago, the Japanese Gatchaman live
Right.
action movie. And the Russos announced in 2019 that they picked up the rights and were working on a movie, but it's still in the concept stage at the moment.
Okay.
So we might actually get to see this. But I'm well there for Battle of the Planets. I loved it growing up. I thought it was fantastic. Maybe not have the maybe don't have the Americanized elements put in there. Maybe make it more similar to Gatchaman. But yeah, I'm for that one. Indie Immy gave us Big Bang Theory. Now, I had to point out to him that I'm not a fan of the series.
Yeah, me neither, really.
I've never cottoned onto it. But if Will Wheaton was to reprise his role as evil Will Wheaton within a movie version, I might be tempted to pop along and see it just to see what they do with it. It's the same as when the Simpsons movie came out. I'd lost interest in the Simpsons a few years beforehand, but I still went to see the movie because it was like, well, what can you do with this on the big screen? And it worked for me. I've still
Okay.
not watched any Simpsons on TV since, but it worked well as a movie. And I think Big Bang Theory, if done right with the right names behind it, could be something different on the big screen than what it is on
They have to
TV.
go on holiday.
Well, that's the concept, isn't it?
The TV trope, they have to go on holiday.
Usually the south of France or Spain. Master Splinter, aka the Riddler 109, suggested, and you probably just go blank faced at this one, SWAT Cats.
Blank face. Ultimate
Yep.
blank face on that
Thought
one.
so. Like a series revival over a movie. It was a 90s Hanna-Barbera animation about vigilante pilots with a state-of-the-art fighter jet.
Don't know that one at
And it
all.
was cancelled after 2 seasons, not because of viewing figures. It was actually one of the highest rated cartoons at the time, but because Ted Turner of Turner Entertainment, who produced the show, wasn't happy with the level of violence in what he saw as a kid's cartoon.
Well,
In his own words, we have more cartoons than anybody. The Flintstones, the Jetsons, the Smurfs, Scooby-Doo, they're non-violent. We don't have to worry that we're encouraging kids to kill each other like some other cartoon programs do. So it was cancelled because someone didn't get that not all animation is aimed at 5-year-olds. Crazy.
don't know that one. That's a complete newbie to me.
Now, my suggestion.
Yeah, we didn't talk about yours. It was all about me.
My one, which this is one that I've wanted for ages, and we kind of got a modern interpretation about 8 to 10 years ago, and that's The Prisoner.
Yeah, we did. We got a version with Sir Ian McKellen and John Cassaville.
Yeah, and I quite liked that one, but I want a proper legacy sequel to the Patrick McGoohan Prisoner TV series, possibly adapting the fantastic graphic novel Shattered Visage, which would make an excellent story. It picks it up many, many years later with someone else investigating all the mystery about the village, and they encounter the Patrick McGoohan character within there. And it kind of like explains some of the ending whilst also opening up more questions. And I'd love to see a return to Port Merion, basically, to the village, and that themes and that look of identity and etc. I know we've got it recently on TV, kind of, with Severance, which is so thematically similar to The Prisoner that it's surprised that they haven't just slapped a logo with a penny farthing on everyone's jackets. But I've always wanted to see a proper resolution to that Prisoner series, and Shattered Visage, the graphic novel, is the only resolution we've had so far that worked. Give me a movie version. Give me that on the big screen. Maybe use it as a jumping off point for a new series.
Just to interject on that, while I was at Port Merion, I was going to say recently, but it's now about 9 years ago, there was, in the shop, there's printouts of letters between McGoohan and Port Merion where they were about to resurrect. They looked like the funding was in place to do a Prisoner sequel movie. which of course never happened. And there's also a very fantastic script that never got developed for Mel Gibson by Christopher McQuarrie, which was a stunning script, which sort of followed on, was a reboot and a remake and a sequel all in one, which is to read it is to understand it. But yes, I think you're absolutely right. I came up with another couple. I said Blake Seven, a Blake Seven movie. Even though actually I think it would make be a better rebooted TV series because you got time to explore the Seven, which never really happened within the old series. But Blake Seven would go down wonderfully. And my all-time sort of favorite idea is UFO, the Jerry Anderson series.
Yeah.
Because in post Independence Day and in post Men in Black, and also what we can now do with effects work, that even though how spectacular UFO was, you can expand upon it so much more. I think it's absolutely right to be remade. It's not like Space 1999, which has sort of needed a series to explore, but you could do it in a movie and show the alien threat. And I'm stunned, shocked and stunned that it's never been done.
Yeah. But with the Blake Seven one, that's something that gets rumoured every couple of years.
Yeah, Idris Elba was connected a couple of years back, and Sky was supposed to be producing a series. So one day, these things don't stay dead forever. I mean, I can certainly see Blake Seven somehow coming back. Not so much UFO. I think TV series would probably, like a CGI series like they did with Captain Scarlet and Thunderbirds. But
for a reboot TV series, one which I'd also throw in to the ring, which I know has a popular response from when we've spoken similar in recent years on MTOS, is Sapphire and Steel.
Yeah, a reboot as a movie or a TV series.
As a TV series. Yeah. I think that would have to be a TV series. Even though each of the stories is kind of independent, it would kind of give it a chance to grow and develop as a mini-series, like the old series was.
I would add in a series called Time Slip, which I saw when I was very, very little. I think it might be on BritBox. It's one of my first memories, other than Doctor Who and Star Trek, of genre TV. I think it got repeated because I can't believe somebody was 7 or 8 at the time, if not younger, having such a good memory of it. But I do remember it's the first time I got frightened by something on TV and had to hide. But I think it would be a great young adult remake, because you don't have to be that reverent to the original series, but to the original idea, and do something brand new with it. So yeah, there's so much right. When you look at some of the series which they bring back, and you think, why that one, when there's so many good ideas that you can go back and explore. So anyway, this week's Twitter challenge, because Andy's going to be talking about the remake of Firestarter, got me thinking, what is everyone's favorite Stephen King adaptation? Now, and I think this could be an open-ended question. It doesn't have to be just movies, because for me, the David Soul version of Salem's Lot is such a great adaptation of one of his books. And there have been some poor adaptations. There's probably been more poor ones than anything else, but there have been some great ones. For me, still the best will always be Dead Zone. I think it's just perfect. It's a perfect movie. So what do you think, Andy? Stephen King adaptations? Tell us what you think is the best one. Why, even, if you want to go that far?
I'd have to think through, because there's some really good ones. I mean, you've got your Shawshanks and you've got your Green Miles.
See, there you go. I'd not even considered those on my list.
But you've also got things like Misery, which I think is a solid adaptation. James Caan is magnificent in that. I agree with you on Dead Zone that it's it's one of the pinnacles. But there are some, as much as a lot of them are a mess, and we spoke about Maximum Overdrive only a couple of weeks ago, there's so many good ones, which is the reason why Stephen King's name being attached to something still means something, because there's always the chance of another Carrie. There's always the chance of another Christine, something that really does something great. So which one is yours? I'll try and decide which one I'm going to pick as my top one by next week. And let's find out from you guys out there what you think is the best Stephen King adaptation. Cool. If anyone says Lawnmower Man, you're blocked.
You know what? Someone is now going to say Lawnmower Man. So that's this week's Twitter challenge. But more importantly, what's on this week's show? Well, we are going to be doing a deep dive into
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, because Andy's on a Michelle Yeoh kick at the moment.
And that will be explained why when we come to our reviews. Andy's going to be talking about
Everything Everywhere All at Once, which landed at cinemas this weekend. I'm also going to be covering Firestarter, which landed at cinemas this weekend, and The Bad Guys. It's been out for a few weeks, but it's now available for home rental, and that's how I got to see it this week. 2 of those films I recommend. Let's see which 2.
But before any of that, the segment that we always like to call by its first name, because its first name is news. So last week saw the release of Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. It came in at the number 1 position, but Andy, is it still hanging in, at least in this dimension? Is it still the number 1 film?
So box office worldwide has seen Doctor Strange hold on to that top spot once more. There's not really a lot of competition for it until Top Gun arrives in just over another week. In the US, Doctor Strange, 61.8 million it took this weekend. It's a significant drop to the previous weekend. I mean, if we break it down, on the Friday, it took 81% less than it did on the previous Friday. But the previous Friday was the opening day. But then Saturday and Sunday were 54 and 53% down on the previous week. So we were expecting a bit of a strong drop. But it still leaves the film worldwide on 703 million so far to date, which is pretty successful only 2 weeks into a film's run. Elsewhere in the US, The Bad Guys is still bringing in business, another 7 million added onto its total. Sonic the Hedgehog 2, again, still bringing family audiences in for another 4.7 million this weekend. New opener, Firestarter, the Stephen King adaptation, it's opening on streaming at the same time in the US, so it's only taken 3.8 million. And holding up 5th place is Everything Everywhere All at Once, with 3.3 million, a film that deserves to do a lot better than just that. Here in the UK, Doctor Strange, again holding the top spot. Another 5.7 million added onto its total. It's taken £30.4 million in the UK so far. Downton Abbey, still bringing in that audience, 970,000, added onto its total of 10.4 million so far. Everything Everywhere All at Once gets 3rd place in the UK with 681,000. A very good opening for a film that's going to see very good positive word of mouth, which will hopefully carry the film over week on week. We'll get to find out next week whether it's going to retain its position. Sonic the Hedgehog holding in at 4th place. And the live event Little Mix Live, the final show, took 5th place.
So I don't know whether you've seen the amazing reviews that the Top Gun sequels get in. I'm putting the good money on that will knock Doctor Strange off the number 1 spot, because I'm so surprised. I mean, I've not seen the film yet. I'm looking forward to seeing it. But the reviews have been phenomenal. I mean, a 5-star in Empire. Universally, critics are loving this.
Yeah, I think they've also needed to open the floodgates on the reviews, because they lifted the embargo on them 2 weeks early. I think it's because the general buzz online hasn't been that great, because the trailer, as great as the trailer is, and it made me go, wow, it made me go like that because it reminded me of the original Top Gun.
Yes.
And they need to get a new audience to jump on board, so they need the positivity of the critics out there to really do it. And the critics are immensely positive, about 96% on Rotten Tomatoes. Absolutely brilliant feedback from it. Everyone's saying that you can approach it as a fan of the original or like as its own film. I'm still not sure how much business it's going to do. It'll do great, but I don't think it's going to be the 1 billion blockbuster. But I'd like to be proven wrong. Because I think that it does rely on that connection that people like me and you have to the original coming out.
Yeah.
And a newer, younger audience haven't got that. But we'll see. I want it to be a success. I do love watching Tom Cruise in action films, and I do love watching fighter jets doing crazy stunts. So it's going to tick all my boxes. It's even got a beach volleyball scene. What more do you need in a film?
Well, the coolest thing is they've created that word of mouth, because, with so many good critical responses, you're going to be afraid of missing out on something that is apparently as good as everyone's saying it is. So I think that's pretty much why they'll have gone down that route of releasing all the reviews so early. But I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I've been looking forward to it since the get-go. But I am looking forward to it. I mean, talking of box office, Jurassic World Dominion's early tracking projects a gigantic $165 to $205 million opening weekend. So, I mean, there's that to contend with as well. I mean, while I know we've had problems with Jurassic World between us, the trailers have been very spectacular. and
Yeah.
and are really sort of selling this idea of what this film and where this film's going. So I think they've done a great bit of marketing on this project, probably in
It's
light of the panning the last one got.
it's taken them 6 films to get there, but they finally got to the stage where the dinosaurs are now part of the full world that
Yeah,
they've integrated onto the mainland. And that's what people have been wanting since that little tease of it with a T-Rex stomping through a suburbia in the second film.
yeah,
So finally, we get to see Jurassic World. Let's be honest.
yeah.
We finally get to see the world aspect of it. As much as I've not been a fan of the last couple of films, I can't help but get excited at that latest trailer. And it's got a bought-in audience, so it's a no-brainer that, Jurassic is going to blow box office records. Anyway,
What else have we got?
let's move into. Well, let's start off with a bit of what I'm going to refer to as no shit Sherlock for for the
For our non-radio
podcast
listeners.
version. Yeah, a new report by The Wrap has alleged that the Oscar fan favourite and cheer moment Twitter polls that led to a certain cult insisting that a certain director is now an Oscar winner might have been subject to a bot campaign. Really? Oh, who'd have
We said
thought
that,
that a
didn't we,
bot
weeks ago?
campaign? Yes. According to the outlets, 2 reports from the hashtag analytics tracking tool Tweetbinder have shown signs of autonomous web programs with bot accounts on the service, casting thousands of votes for, guess what? Yep, you guessed it, Zack Snyder and Army of the Dead and Justice League, which would explain very unusual spikes of activity, such as a one-day jump of 25,000 votes after there'd been weeks of daily votes being around 15 to 35% of that activity. Really? Who'd have thought that a campaign that thinks that hashtags means the world and can get them everything, and yet has demonstrably proven to not be as popular when it gets released, actually had to fake the results in order to win something?
Colour me unsurprised. However, the question that comes off the back of that is what happens next? Is it just put it down to an investigation? Does it put it down to the element of, does it by default have to change anything? I mean, the film didn't win anything. It was just a
No.
viewer's poll. So in the scheme of things, nobody cares that much.
All it means is that because the Oscars are quite keen to repeat this kind of thing next year. They're quite keen to do that social engagement aspect. Every company is doing this at the moment. They like the social engagement. Hashtag
It
this,
makes
hashtag
sense.
that. So they're keen to keep it up, but they now need to work out how to restructure it to avoid this, because you can't have votes getting cast by Twitter accounts that only have one follower themselves and have only posted 5 things. They're 5 votes. That's where the problem is, because they are clearly bot accounts that have been created and generated just to take part in this. So we'll see when it comes to next year's Oscars, which, Oscar doesn't plan to change any of its approach that it did this year. Well, maybe they'll change one aspect, not have like an actor go up and slap someone on stage, but the rest of it is plans to be more of the same, because it was quite a successful result for them this year at the Oscars. Viewing figures were increased, and why not keep with that process? So let's move on to, did you see that the Disney website in the UK accidentally revealed a release date for She-Hulk TV series this week?
No, I did not.
Yes, they posted up a list of upcoming shows, which, strangely enough, none of the other ones worldwide did. And it was swiftly taken down and re-amended. But in the time that it was up there, we got to see that the date to mark down is August the 17th. For those who don't know what She-Hulk is, it's going to be a comedy approach to the series, 10 episodes, and we'll see Mark Ruffalo as Banner helping his cousin Jennifer Walters, played by Tatiana Maslany, when she needs a blood transfusion, which obviously results in the lawyer Jennifer gaining his Hulk-like nature. Anyone who's read the She-Hulk comics will know what to expect, and I've got a lot of love for the humour that goes on within them. I'm hoping they're going to go through the whole aspect of her being defense attorney for criminals that she might have even taken down at some point. I love the approach. I love that they could do something different with it. And as we've seen with Marvel shows, they are having fun doing something very different with each one.
I don't like rumour and innuendo, and we don't often do it, but there was a rumour going around through some circles that it could be read 2 ways, that Marvel are worried about this series, and it could be read that they're worried that it's maybe too different, and it's something that we've not seen before. So therefore, the expectation is how well received it might be. There's rumor that it's going to break the fourth wall and be more broad comedy than what we've seen previously, or they're worried that it's not quite turned out that the way they want it to.
Yeah.
Either way, it's still just a rumor, but that's kind of from an inside circle. But as I said, that could be read two ways entirely.
Yeah, I mean, last time that we had similar rumours within the MCU was when James Gunn was making Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes.
And I think we're all quite happy with how that turned out. And it proved that sometimes you can do something a little different and a little bit flippant, and it pays off. So I'm confident that when it releases, the audiences will latch onto it, because everyone says that the MCU's got a formula and everything's too much the same. But then they get worried when they hear that something might not be to formula and be the same. Just embrace it. Let it play out. And that's what the TV shows are doing. I mean, Moon Knight was not what we expected from Moon Knight, but boy, I loved it because it wasn't what we expected.
Yeah,
and I can't wait to see the future of that character within the MCU framework. Horror news.
Yes, please.
The First Omen, a prequel to the 1976 First Omen film, has assigned Arkasha Stevenson, who gave us Legion and Briar Patch, to direct. The original film saw Damien Thorne, a young child replaced at birth and raised as a diplomat's son, who's the prophesied Antichrist. And this film is expected to be a direct prequel to that film, with Stevenson and her writing partner, Tim Smith, set to redraft the current screenplay that's out there. I love the original Omen.
Yeah, very much. I mean, did you ever see the dreadful remake?
Oh, yes.
Well, I would say dreadful remake, unnecessary remake. It might be a better term.
It was a lazy remake, if anything.
There was nothing particularly wrong with it. It was just why it didn't bring anything new to the party. But you're right, the original Richard Donner version was quite something.
And the original film spawned 2 sequels. 3 if you include the one with the girl instead, but we try not to. The second film was pretty good, which basically picked up straight from the end of the first film. The third one kind of lost it because it moved ahead to Damien being older, and it was trying to do the resolution of the apocalypse. But the original Omen film is still a film that stands up today. Absolutely. I want them to get this prequel right. I'm not sure how much story there is within a prequel of it, because surely the story of the Omen is from the birth onwards. But it's just one and a half hour sex scene involving dogs.
Oh, I've got the image in my head now, Andy. I can't get it out.
But yeah, I'm interested to see what they do with it, because as a fan of the original, I'm intrigued to see whether this deserves a prequel to it. Let's see. And for some horror comedy instead, Totally Killer from Blumhouse and Amazon has lined up Kiernan Shipka, who you might know from the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Yeah.
Julie Bowen from Modern Family. Randall Park, the marvellous Randall Park from WandaVision. And Olivia Holt from Cruel Summer heading up the cast. And I like the idea of this film. Shipka is playing Jamie with Bowen as a mom, Pam. And Pam is attacked by the Sweet 16 killer, a masked maniac who slaughtered teen girls back in the 80s. With the help of her friend, Jamie travels backwards in time to 1987 and teams up with the teen version of her mom to stop the killer. I'm in. Bit of time travel horror. I'm in.
I've got a bit of news. Alexander Skarsgård, who we recently saw as the Northman, is teaming up with Dane DeHaan, who last I saw him in was Lisa's Story for Apple. And they're both going to play reluctant tiger hunters in a film called The Tiger, which I don't know much about, but it has kind of a Ghost in the Darkness vibe about it to me.
Dane DeHaan is one of those actors that never seems to have found the right role to really showcase himself. He's had some promising moments.
Yeah. Last time I saw him, he was in Lisa's Story. He was chewing the scenery.
Yeah. He just needs... He deserves to be recognised more than he is, because he can be a great actor, but he just kind of chose the wrong projects.
Yeah.
After that early start with Chronicle,
yes,
which he showed so much promise in, he just got latched onto... Well, he got latched onto Amazing Spider-Man 2, didn't he? And from there, it was all downhill. Richard Linklater news. He's going to re-team with Glenn Powell, who worked with him on Everybody Wants Some and Apollo 10.5, for the action comedy Hitman. The actor is going to play a Houston cop working undercover as the most in-demand hitman for hire, but one day he breaks protocol to help a desperate woman trying to escape an abusive boyfriend. with a bit of the Richard Linklater charm in there. I can picture us having a bit of fun with that one. I'm looking forward to it.
What else we got?
Well, the news of the week for me is a bit of casting news for Dune Part 2.
Yeah, I was waiting for you with bated breath to bring this one up.
Now, what amuses me is on the news reports that I've read of this, no one's picked up the reference that I picked up on as soon as it was announced. So Christopher Walken has been cast in the sequel to Dune, and he's been cast.
Can I just stop you there, Andy? Because I think every time you mention Christopher Walken, don't you have to put the prefix of the great Christopher Walken?
Oh, the majestically wonderful Christopher Walken. He's been cast as Emperor Shaddam IV, the ruler of the known universe, who set up the Atreides family to cause their downfall. He joins other newcomers such as Florence Pugh, who's playing Princess Irulan, and Austin Butler, who's playing Faith Ralpha. But Christopher Walken being cast. Now, the reference that I'm going to refer to that everyone seems to have missed, Christopher Walken famously danced his way around a hotel lobby in Fatboy Slim's Weapon of Choice video. Yeah?
He did. Yes, he did.
And it's a marvellous video. If you've never seen it, go onto YouTube right now. Pause this, go onto YouTube, watch that video. Sublime. It's so brilliant. And Walken clearly enjoying himself in it. But Fatboy Slim's Weapon of Choice contains the lines of dialogue sung out, "Walk without rhythm, and you won't attract the worm," which directly references Dune. It's come full circle, and no one's picked up on this.
I thought you were going to say, hasn't he played this role before in Jungle Book? But no, I'll go with that one instead. That's much more interesting.
It's a great. I just thought as soon as I heard this news, I was like, oh my goodness, that's just such a perfect one. But he's a great piece of casting because people were wondering whether they were going to go mean and sinister and foreboding for Emperor Shaddam, but he should not have an imposing stature, but have that subdued, cunning menace. And Walken, as we know well, can do cunning menace to perfection. I'm wondering if they'll find a section of the film that he can dance in. But, if they don't, I'm sure he'll manage to do like a little jig just off screen at some point.
The role that it's closest to, and it's one of my, it would be in my top 20 all-time favourite films, is Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, where he played the crime lord.
Yeah.
It was just quietly chilling. It wasn't Walken at his over-the-top craziness, but it was his subdued craziness that made him terrifying in that film.
And there's more exciting news for me this week. Now, this was a very close second for exciting news. Spinal Tap 2, a sequel to the 1984 film, will see Rob Reiner reprise the role of Marty DeBurgi, who's taking a new look at where David St. Hubbins, Derek Smalls, and Nigel Tufnell, McKean, Shearer, and Guest are now. And this is a project that they've all been discussing over the past few years as a way to have fun with that aspect again. The story being that after the loss of their manager, Ian Faith, the late, great Tony Hendra, Ian's widow finds a contract which says that Tap owed them one more concert and she will sue them if they don't do it. However, the band split up quite a few years ago now and don't talk to each other. So they're forced back together for one last show with Marty DeBurgi, who anyone who's listened to the commentary on the DVD release of Spinal Tap will know that the band aren't happy with what Marty DeBurgi did with his documentary.
True. They were very disappointed.
You've literally got to be a full fan of all the extra material of Spinal Tap to get the meta-ness of them now bringing him back, and he's going to be directing them with them hating him being like the director again and trying to work out how they're going to play on stage. And I'm in. I mean, I love Tap. I love all the post-film stuff that they did. I love their gig stuff. I love their they had that reprisal about 15 years ago where they went touring and they did little mini segments. And I think there is room for this gang of people to bring us the same level of enjoyment with a nice little stab at modern music documentaries at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, if you've seen, as you've referenced, the Blu-ray or the DVD, there's enough on the outtakes to make another movie. Isn't there about 50 minutes worth of outtakes and deleted scenes? Which
on the DVD, they compiled together in like a little mini movie and then did an audio commentary over that as well. Which, I'm telling you, if you've never delved into all the extras on the DVD and Blu-ray release of the Spinal Tap movie, just treat yourself one day and go through everything because there's a wealth of stuff there. And this film is clearly going to be drawing upon the stuff that wasn't in the original film.
Can I just tell you my Tap moment?
Tap away.
I played a gig and we wanted to make a big entrance, and so we decided it was a fairly well-known big-ish club, and it was the first gig with this particular band. So we thought, right, we want to make a big entrance on this. We'll go down the stairs, and normally in sort of clubs, sometimes you have to walk through the audience to get onto the stage. And I said, well, we know there's a side stage entrance. We'll go that way. So we followed the staircase down, got to this door, which was locked, and we couldn't find our way back, which is such a Tap moment. And everybody just went, this is so Spinal Tap, because it's now a part of who we are.
Yeah, that's one that we will keep our eye out for, and I can't wait to watch it.
There.
More revival from the 80s, Dirty Dancing is getting a sequel.
Yeah, now I read this.
Jonathan Levine has been tagged to bring it to the screen. Jonathan Levine, who gave us Warm Bodies and Long Shot, both films that I quite like. Jennifer Grey is going to reprise her role as Frances Baby Houseman, and she's returning to the Kellermans during the 90s. The film will once more be a coming-of-age romance centred on the experiences of a young woman at the summer camp, because why not just rinse and repeat? And Baby's own journey will intertwine with that of the new, younger cast. But Grey might not be the only original film's face to return. Levine's been talking to Deadline. They're about to talk to other people and exploring the possibilities. The most important thing was having Jennifer on board. She's an invaluable collaborator, going to try to involve as many people from the original as is appropriate, and we want to be respectful in every way. Now, they've got to be respectful because, as we know, the great Patrick Swayze passed away a few years ago, yes. And that shadow of his character is going to loom all over the production. Can it live up to his memory?
Well, I mean, there was a sequel, much forgotten, Dirty Dancing, Havana Nights. It tried to do something a little bit different, wasn't it? It wasn't very successful. In fact, it was a flop. Is it one of those where there's such an embedded audience into Dirty Dancing that they would go back and see another film because it's got Jennifer Grey in? But my feelings are people love that film because of the relationship between Grey and Patrick Swayze. That's what the film was about. It was about that relationship. So only time will tell. I don't want to damn anything before it started, but I think the heart of that film was clearly Patrick Swayze. I've never been a fan. My other half loves it. It's one of her favourite films. In fact, she went to a live event where they had dancers on and they had a screening outside of it a few years ago. She got very drunk, which I like to remind her of many times. But I mean, there is an audience out there, but that audience didn't come back for Havana Nights, so it'll be interesting to see where they go.
Yep. Also bringing back familiar faces is the next film in the Scream franchise.
I was just about to mention that, but you beat me to it.
Hayden Panettiere, who was in the fourth film, is the latest one to be close to signing a deal to reprise her character of Kirby Reed, who was a survivor on the fourth film. And that casting came hot on the heels of Melissa Barrera, Jasmine Savoy Brown, Mason Gooding, and Jenna Ortega, who are all returning from the fifth film. The new film is going to see the most recent survivors leave Woodsboro and try to start a fresh new chapter in their lives, but obviously more killings happen. And James Vanderbilt and Guy Busick are returning to write, with Matt Bettolini open and Tyler Gillett back to direct to keep the tone and the consistency between the previous film and this new one. I'm on board because the more recent Scream film, it's my second favourite Scream film after the first one.
Right. I'm going to shock you now, Andy. Did you see the trailer for the new Resident Evil series about to land on Netflix?
Yeah, boy.
Wow. Actually, as you know, I had no interest in the last Resident Evil movie, and I think the last movie version I saw fully was when a friend of mine did one, which, if you've listened to the show, I don't have to go into. And I watched that because a friend of mine directed it. But I saw bits and pieces on TV, and they looked cheap and all over the place. But I've got to be honest, it looks promising, and it looks more faithful and a really scary adaptation.
Well, the more recent movie was a very faithful adaptation. It really drew into the gritty first and second games in particular. But this series, it looks like it's going to really tap into what happened after Raccoon City, what happened after the fall of Earth, and push it further ahead. It looks great. Yeah. I love the creature designs. They've got them right. It looks polished. Fingers crossed it pays off. Let's see.
Only time will tell.
Jodie Comer has joined the sci-fi post-environmental collapse thriller The End We Start From. which is set in a London of the near future, which has been submerged by floodwaters. The story focuses on a young family caught up in the chaos. Coma will play the mother with a newborn child trying to find a way home. And it's adapted from a novel by Megan Hunter, which drew comparisons with Cormac McCarthy's The Road. And Liam Neeson is teaming up with Cold Pursuit director. If you've not seen Cold Pursuit, don't bother.
I guess they don't.
To Hans-Peter Molland for Thug. He will play, this sounds like him really playing against type, a San Pedro gangster attempting to reconnect with his children and rectify the mistakes of his past. But the criminal underworld isn't letting him leave easily. Wow, he's got to really stretch his range there, isn't he? And at the same time, Neeson has also signed up to star in the sci-fi action feature Cold Storage. So from Cold Pursuit to Cold Storage. Cold Storage will see him star alongside Joe Keery from Stranger Things and the brilliant Spree that I cannot recommend enough for Studio Canal. And it's based on the novel by David Coop, beginning decades ago when a highly infectious mutating microorganism, which could wipe out life off the planet completely, was put into, you guessed it, cold storage. Cut to today, and the lowest sub-level in the military compound that it's confined to is warming up, threatening the organism to escape and spread and destroy the world. In steps retired bioterror operative, Neeson, and two unlikely heroes in the facility who are humanity's last hope. This comes from the penning of Johnny Campbell, Westworld, and worked on Doctor Who will also be directing on this one.
Okay, that sounds more interesting if I'm going to watch a Liam Neeson flick these days. That's intriguing.
Haven't we had enough of him being like, I've neglected my children to do this kind of career. I want to reconcile with my children, but all my past is catching up with me. We've had enough of them. Please, Liam, do these ones where you can fight a disease. You can't punch a disease, so you've got to do something different. And quick bit of casting. Dan Stevens is now on board Adam Wingard's sequel to Godzilla vs. Kong. Stevens worked with Wingard on The Guest. I've still not seen The Guest. I've heard so many good things. And shooting will begin on Godzilla vs. Kong 2 in Australia pretty soon. The first film, even though it got a HBO Max release at the same date, was still a box office smash.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
Because who doesn't enjoy watching giant creatures beat the living daylights out of each other?
I think that's where you were going, somewhere close.
Yes.
It's a family audience.
While stood on top of aircraft carriers. I mean, that's just bonkers.
Sadly, before we go, and I hate doing this because it's becoming, well, we've reached an age where some of our childhood heroes and actors that we grew up with are passing away. And sadly, that's not just in film, that's in every walk of entertainment. But this week's a particularly hard one to get his head around because I always thought that Fred Ward was invincible because that's the kind of actor that he was. He was an invincible actor. So Fred Ward has passed away at the age of 79. We spoke about him on this show in, well, one of our favourite films and a film that means a lot to you, Andy, Tremors.
Tremors. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of all the Tremors series of films and even the TV series. And part of that love came from that very first film, which paired Fred Ward up with Kevin Bacon in a perfect duo. The banter between them felt fluid and natural. I know that Kevin Bacon's said that, it was such a joy to work with someone like Fred Ward, who, Ward had built up his reputation in films with roles in films like Escape from Alcatraz. He'd been in a variety of dramas and action thrillers throughout the 70s and 80s. And Tremors just brought him in the 90s to a whole new audience.
He was a versatile actor. I mean, he would turn up in so many different genres. You'd see him playing in something like Remo Williams, The Adventure Begins. I can think of him in a really underrated TV movie called Cast a Deadly Spell. And then you would see him in things like Henry and June and True Detective, and two of my all-time favourite films, and one of them my introduction to Fred Ward, which was The Right Stuff, which he is phenomenal in, and Walter Hill's Southern Comfort, which he's just a powerhouse in, and a film that we should do as a deep dive at some point. A fantastic actor, one that we will, sadly, I don't think we'll see the like again of. He had that versatility, he had a certain screen demeanour. He was never a big star, but everything he played in, he brought gravitas to the role. And for us, right here on the Film File, he'll be sadly missed, and our thoughts go out to Fred's friends and family. And that is this week's The News. Still with us? Still in this particular portion of the multiverse? Good to hear. Why don't you, if you've not done so already, become part of the Film File? All you have to do is head over to your favourite podcast platform, search Film File, hit that subscription, and become part of this particular universe. Leave a review, subscribe. We'd like you to do both because, trust me, it's worth it. Why? Because you can join in with such things as...
You can head over to Twitter. You can follow us at Film File and join us in any discussions that we have over there, including our Twitter question of the week and movie talk on Sundays. You can contact us or follow us on other social media platforms. Just search for Film File UK. You can't miss us. You can email us. We do like getting emails. We even the spammy junk mails that I occasionally get, I do like every bit of them. It makes me feel important. But you can email us with thoughts, suggestions, any films that you want us to cover as a deep dive that you don't think that we've covered. Anything that you don't want us to cover as a deep dive because you hate it, we're going to cover it. But email us with anything that you want. That's podcast@filmfile.uk. Just get in touch with us. This is, like Lee said, a Film File family. You are as important to this show as we are.
Not quite, because we're the ones who have to make it. But, I know what you mean.
I'd like to think that if we didn't make one, they'd still imagine that we made one because they're part of the family.
In part of our multiverse, someone's making one right now. And now it's time for this week's deep dive. And in light of Andy talking about the latest movie from Michelle Yeoh, we thought we'd go back and look at a classic, the 2000 film directed by Ang Lee, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
America's top critics agree Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is everything we go to the movies for. Exhilarating, visually stunning, spectacular, romantic, fantastic, visionary, filmmaking magic, the best movie of the year. Chow Yun-fat, Michelle Yeoh, and Zhang Ziyi. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
This film was a game changer when it came out, mainly for the fact that it featured an international Asian cast. It's the story of Master Li, a warrior who asks Yu Shun-lin, the woman he loves, to pass on his sword, Green Destiny, to Sir Ti. However, when a sword is stolen, Li embarks on a mission to find it. This is an absolute swirling epic of a film, introducing a lot of Western audiences for the first time to wuxia cinema. It starred the great Chow Yun-fat, Michelle Yeoh, Zhang Ziyi, Chang Cheng, and it's based on the Chinese novel of the same name, which came out in serialized form between 1941 and 1942, and it's the fourth part of the Crane Iron pentalogy. As I said, it's an absolutely sumptuous film. It's also one of those films which just proved that Ang Lee could make any kind of film that he wanted. He could bring his unique visual style, which we saw in films like Hulk, Life of Pi, Brokeback Mountain, but this really stands out for being a beautiful, absolutely stunningly sumptuous kung fu action movie in a way that traditional Chinese cinema had been doing for years, but this was a first for American cinema. And I know, Andy, you've got an awful lot of love for this film.
I threw out this as a deep dive this week simply because after watching Michelle Yeoh in one of the reviews that I'm going to talk about later, I really wanted to jump back to this film because I realised that as much as I love this film, I've probably not watched it for at least 15 years. I watched it on the big screen, was completely taken in with it, bought it on DVD, and I've maybe watched it once or twice on DVD, and I just wanted to revisit. I wanted to go back to it and see whether it still lives up to it. And boy, it still looks and plays beautifully. It plays more beautifully than what I remembered it playing. Ang Lee directs the film with very broad strokes. He takes time to grow the melodramatic aspects before presenting us lavishly entwined action moments. And those action set pieces, the choreography is almost like a ballet. It's not like vicious attacks. It's not like thuggish movements. It's swirling and choreographed, and it's like an interplay between everyone and very fantastical in nature. Silent pursuit over rooftops, those chasing each other, literally walking on air at times. An infight that looks like an elaborate dance playing out, even though there is occasional glimmers of blood. A confrontation in a bamboo forest that ascends to the highest branches and becomes almost poetic visually as you're watching them. It throws you into an otherworldly kind of aspect that us in the West had never really encountered before. Those who had followed like Chinese cinema and also Chinese TV serials throughout the years, and I got some aspect of it from my love of, monkey TV series that we've mentioned previously on the show. We got to see them really represented in such a majestic way for the first time. And the wire work techniques that are involved in the film, we're so accustomed to these days. So many films use wire work techniques for action sequences that we kind of take for granted. But this film was one of the first ones to really utilize them in a creative way, and it blew audiences away at the time. One thing that stood out when I rewatched this recently is I'd always thought of this as a Chow Yun-fat film, but rewatching it, he's very much a support role in his story, because this is a very female-led film. The female characters, Michelle Yeoh's character and Zhang Ji, her role, they're the key story drivers throughout, with Chow Yun-fat's Li Mubai basically just being a plot point.
I was going to say, Andy, that you're right. I mean, those of us who've watched Chinese cinema were quite familiar with the wire work way of doing fight sequences, and I think bringing it to a new audience. And you are right, and the bamboo sequence in particular is a standout for me. There are some amazing martial art battles, but the film is also so utterly beautiful. I mean, it's directed in such a way which takes you back to a period of Chinese history, but it's such a fanciful fantasy piece of Chinese history. But what makes this film work for me is it's just so beautifully dramatic. It's the love aspect, the romance aspect, the tasteful drama that makes this work, and why I think it's been held up for such universal acclaim. I mean, this was a film that got nominated for awards internationally. It found a US audience, grossing more than $8 million at the box office, which is unheard of for a film which is in Mandarin.
Yeah.
I know the film did get released in some territories dubbed, but that sort of almost takes away the poetry of watching these actors perform. I think it does it an injustice. The film is breathtaking, but it's also heartbreaking as well. It's the love story that gives it its heart. It's the relationship between these characters who can't say what they feel about each other, and that's what I always walk away from. Not the fact that it's the fantastic battle sequences, and yes, they are. It is that love story.
Yeah, as much as the core story is about the theft of the Sword of Destiny, that is just a plot device because, like you say, it's the love aspect. It's a story of unrequited love between Li Mubei and Yu Shu Lian, played by Chow Yun-fat and Michelle Yeoh brilliantly, but also unwanted love from Zhang Zi's character, who is the daughter of the governor, who's been tagged to marry, and she doesn't want to. She wants to become an adventurer. She wants to become a warrior. She wants to become a fighter. And it's those, like I say, melodramatic aspects, the kind of thing that you get in Chinese serials where it goes melodramatic and it's all about family engagements and like honor and everything. And that's what plays it, and that's what draws you in and makes this more than just an action film. Like you say, the film was nominated for loads of awards, and it won a significant amount for pretty much everything. Costume, cinematography, cast, crew. The success of this film paved way for a wealth of similar productions to finally get released in the West in following years. We saw films such as Hero, The Marvelous House of Flying Daggers, Zoo Warriors, Seven Swords. Over the next 5-6 years, there was a deluge of them just tagging in to the success that this film did. It's just a shame that it took them about 15 years to finally get round to bringing an actual sequel to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, by which time the popularity had kind of waned, and it got released in the UK on Netflix as Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sword of Destiny. Michelle Yeoh reprised her role, but she's the only one who returned.
Yeah, Zhang Zi said she wouldn't do it unless Ang Lee was connected to the film. I've not seen the sequel, and the reason I didn't is because it's not an Ang Lee film, and I think that's the difference. Ang Lee understood Chinese cinema, but he also understood the complexities of what a Western audience wanted, and it was a fine tightrope walk to bring back this tradition that's been, as we've said, has been going on in Chinese movie making for decades. But to have that emotional content that would appeal to a Western audience, and I think he was the right guy for it. And I think that's why it stands out even now, even off the back end of films like Hero, which I love, by the way. I think this still stands out as being one of the very, very best, because all the elements are right, all the combinations of East meets West to a degree, because I know Wang Li's a Chinese cinema director, but he understands American feature making, and that works. He understands the beats, the rhythms, which can sometimes throw me out of Asian films, because we have a tradition. It's in our DNA how we understand storytelling, and he brought that to this beautiful canvas and produced this beautiful film.
The influence that this film had on Western cinema throughout the years can still be seen today, and indeed last year the MCU gave us Shang-Chi, which not only contained the graceful fighting styles of wuxia, but also themes of love and honor, which were core to the story. And we'll continue to see this influence play out in cinema going forwards, because everything that Crouching Tiger brought to the screen worked for a very valid reason. Like you say, Ang Lee delivered it perfectly. He gave us a film that is well and truly worth revisiting, holds up well 2 decades later, and is possibly one of the most beautiful blockbusters ever to grace the big screen.
There's nothing more I can say to that, Andy. If you've not had a chance, I'm going to say to watch, but to absolutely experience this film, then please do so. See it on the biggest screen you can. See it on the biggest TV you can, because its attention to detail, its beauty will win you over, as well as a very touching story as well. Andy, where can we find it if we want to see it?
It's available to view on Netflix for no charge, or you can just treat yourself and get yourself the Blu-ray and get it in the full resolution that you should be watching it in, and experience this film.
And that's this week's deep dive, and we'll be back with another one very soon. And now it's time for this week's reviews. At least 2 of those I was hoping to have seen this week, but just time is there's not been enough of it. That's what I can say. But I do believe in one part of the multiverse, not only have I seen all of these films, but I'm the one reviewing them. Tell me, Andy, because you know how much I've been dying to see this film.
Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Is it the film I'm hoping it should be?
Mom, just wait.
No time to wait. Very busy.
Across the multiverse, I've seen thousands of Evelyns. If you can imagine it, somewhere out there, it exists.
Don't start shaking. You keep me safe. You'll never think you're the only one.
The universe is bigger than you realize.
Do you think this is funny?
There's no going back.
Of all the places I could be, I just want to be here with you.
Now, this is a film that takes some dissecting, as it delivers exactly what the title suggests. Everything. Genuinely laugh out loud, funny at points, marvellously inventive action scenes, a confusing but in a good way plotline, a heartfelt drama about family and conflict, and a thesis on existentialism. There's so much going on that at the end of the film, I knew I'd seen something really special, but could only initially post a 1-word review. Wow. Michelle Yeoh is front and centre in a role that sees her do pretty much everything, getting a chance to really play every approach as she plays Evelyn Wang, a mother who's struggled to live up to her father's expectations, whilst also struggling to allow her own daughter, Joy, to become her own entity. With a marriage that is strained, her husband, Waymond, is seeking divorce. All of her home worries suddenly pale into insignificance when her husband suddenly acts a little strange, insisting he's been taken over by another version from another multiverse, and only the pair of them can prevent a dark evil from destroying all reality. From that point onwards, Evelyn begins to find her importance in the multiverse, while still trying to fix the problems in her own timeline. The energy of this film kicks in pretty early, and it doesn't let up as we're rapidly introduced to the concept of multiverse and the bizarre manner in which you can tap into other versions of your life by doing something a little strange and out of sorts. The stranger the act, the more likely the success in jumping between realities. And the result is a film which, at times, is so insanely crazy that you'll find yourself rupturing with laughter right before it hits you with an emotional moment of reflection. You see, even though this is an action-packed comedy, it knows exactly when to slow down a little and let us feel and care for everyone. And this includes the being that's responsible for trying to destroy the realities. We are let a chance to care. The film looks amazing and far exceeds the expectations of a $25 million budget. Unlike many higher budgeted action outings, the money here has been spent perfectly, but never at the expense of the story. This is no mindless multiverse venture. This is, as mentioned at the head of the review, a study of existentialism and family, which will leave you emotionally impacted and contemplating the impact that you can make on the lives of others around you. Find a cinema near you showing this right now and get a ticket booked. You know how a few weeks ago, after seeing The Northman, I said, I've just seen the 5 out of 5 film of the year for me,
Yes.
and nothing's going to beat it. The Northman is now my second favourite film of the year.
Wow.
Because Everything Everywhere All at Once blew me away.
I don't know if you've seen the clip on YouTube of Michelle Yeoh talking about being cast in this film by...
Wait, is it the one where she breaks down in tears?
Yeah, and she breaks down in
Yeah.
tears because she never thought she would be offered anything like this. And it's just such a touching moment to see her career validated that, you know, other people saw for being more than just an action star. And she's always been more than just an action star. Everything she's done, she delivers a fantastic performance, even down to Star Trek Discovery, where, you know, she was in a multiverse in that one as well.
Yeah.
She's an amazing screen presence. I certainly will be going to see this film. And as I said, somewhere else in the multiverse, I've already seen it. And in another multiverse, I'm in it. Work that one out.
Next film that I'll be looking at is another one that came out at the cinemas this week.
And you know how much I wanted to see this. In fact, when we were talking about upcoming movies, this was high on my list because, as you know from our Twitter question, I'm a big Stephen King film adaptation fan. Now, I've seen the original, and it's not bad. The Mark L. Lester version isn't bad. It just deviates too much from the book with one piece of really terrible, wrong casting. But it's not bad. And I always thought there was room to make a great version of Firestarter. But I'm guessing this isn't the great version of Firestarter.
Honey, it happened again.
Weirdo.
I wish I was normal.
You're strong, Charlie. You're gonna change the world. The girl's power is growing.
She's a real superhero.
I'm a monster!
You have to learn how to control your power.
I can help you.
Liar, liar. Pants on fire.
Released to cinemas and to streaming on Peacock at the same time, we have this new adaptation of the Stephen King novel that already saw a much derided adaptation in the mid-80s. Now, whilst this version is better than that older adaptation, it's only marginally so. And perhaps it is time for us to accept that the majority of Stephen King tales should maybe just remain on the page. Zac Efron and Sidney Lemon, Andy and Vicky, a couple who were involved in some top-secret lab trials which gave them supernatural powers. And now, in the present day, they have their own daughter, Charlie, played by Ryan Keira Armstrong, who's inherited abilities herself, destructive ones in the guise of pyrokinesis. Constantly on the move to avoid detection, things slip when Charlie loses controls of her power at school, resulting in a government agency seeking the couple, and especially the girl, whose powers could be tapped and used as a great weapon. First things first, Ryan Keira Armstrong is a decently strong presence in the key role of Charlie. Zac Efron is solid enough, and Michael Greyeyes as Rainbird is chillingly menacing. Really good bit of casting. However, everyone else, including the usually great Kurtwood Smith, are lacking. And the plodding nature of the film drags the short 94 minutes out, so it feels like double that. Any of the impact of the book is lost in the meandering approach the film takes, and the end result is a film that sits comfortably in a DVD bargain bin as opposed to being a big screen event. This is yet another example of how Stephen King seems to be so hard for creators to bring to the big screen.
I'm hugely disappointed. I was looking forward to it. A new Stephen King adaptation, I'm always in, but that sounds pretty poor. And I was kind of suspicious when there were no reviews or not much as far as publicity about this film. We saw a trailer which looked pretty good a few months back. Now, one thing that does interest me, and maybe because I'm not likely to see the film until it hits streaming is the fact that John Carpenter has done the soundtrack. And John Carpenter originally was the director for the first version of Firestarter. And of course, he went on to do Christine. So in my head, I'm just going to imagine that this is a concept album by John Carpenter for an unmade film called Firestarter. And I think that works for me. I think I'll stick with that. Okay, Andy, your next review is
The Bad Guys, which is available for home rental premium at this point in time.
From DreamWorks Animation, who brought you Shrek and Kung Fu Panda.
Show the world you're more than just a scary stereotype.
It's an action-packed animated adventure everyone will love.
Is it true sharks can smell blood a mile away? No, that's freaky.
The Bad Guys, rated PG.
Mr. Wolf, Mr. Snake, Ms. Tarantula, Mr. Shark, and Mr. Piranha have avoided capture in their crime sprees, using the human terror at their forms to benefit, whilst coolly and calmly pulling off heists. But when one job goes wrong, the gang find themselves given the option of years in prison or take part in an experiment to turn them into good guys. Opting for the second, the gang struggle to break old habits, but with Mr. Wolf determined to charm Diane Foxington, a Red Fox governor, he does everything he can to bring the others into line in this wild, wacky, and thoroughly enjoyable animated offering from DreamWorks. The animated style was the first thing that drew me to this. The trailers look snappy and slick with a smooth animated style, which also used quick cuts and edits to make it very comic book styled. And thankfully, the end result plays very similar. The vibe feels like a kid-friendly Ocean's 11, with Wolf channeling George Clooney vibes throughout, and this is a good thing. Right from the offset, I was chuckling away at the comic moments, whilst being instantly drawn to the charms of the leads. But it's definitely aided by that animated polish. Inspired by the success of the Spider-Verse film, which showed how you could break the mold on style, The Bad Guys looks fresh and unique, distinguishing it from other animations of our time. Yes, the plotline is predictable, and anyone who doesn't see the twists and turns in advance hasn't seen many films in their lives, but that's not a problem when the whole thing is so well done. This is an absolute joy of animated fun, and it's one that I look forward to revisiting over and over again at future dates.
See, I'm always looking for a good family film, to entertain the child. I've just got him into Planet of the Apes, which is not particularly family friendly, but stay with me. But every now and then we've got to go back a beat, and I always like the look of this, and it seemed to the reviews were good, and it seemed to just hit the right beats for me. So we'll keep that one high on our list. Anything else up and coming, or anything else out that we need to see?
It's a bit of a quiet week ahead of us. So we've got at cinemas, Benediction will be getting a limited release. And more exciting for me is RoboCop is getting a 4K restoration across the UK this coming week. So keep a lookout on your local cinema and go and watch RoboCop in all its brutal, bloody glory. Over on Now TV and Sky, Halloween Kills. So you can be disappointed with a film in a franchise that apparently will be ending this year, hopefully. Netflix, Love, Death and Robots Season 3. Now, we've spoken about Love, Death and Robots previously, and whilst not all of them hit the mark, there's enough quality in there and enough ideas that make us really want to see more short animations of a sci-fi concept.
Even the poor episodes are just visually absolutely amazing.
So well worth checking out. One which I will be checking out, which you won't be, is Jackass 4.5, which lands on Netflix this week. And on Amazon, Night Sky, which sees J.K. Simmons and Sissy Spacek in a sci-fi drama about a couple who discover a chamber buried in their backyard, which leads to a strange deserted planet.
Yeah, I saw the trailer for this a couple of shows back, and it looks, J.K. Simmons, the conversation should just end there, but yeah, looked very intrigued. Well, what a show. More to come next week. We just don't know what more you're going to get, because for this week, we're done. But of course, before we go, we have to do our neat things. Our neat things are something that we've seen, enjoyed, whether that's gaming, whether that's a comic, whether it's a book, whether it's a fantastic meal, you name it, as long as it's neat, then we get to talk about it. Andy, I think we know where you're going for your neat thing.
Yes. Now, this is something that so many times when I've revealed my love of this to people, they've looked at me blank-faced with a, really? You like this? And last night was one of those nights of the year that I absolutely love, because it was the Eurovision Song Contest. Yes, I am not ashamed to say I am a fan of Eurovision. I have been since I was a kid, and I watch it every year, and it can be cheesy. It can be ridiculously campy at times, and I love that. But in more recent years, it's also been a great showcase of musical talent. And I've ended up following a lot of artists on Spotify as a result of them popping up at the Eurovision. Over the past few years, there's been quite a lot of rock and metal entries that have made its way into the final from some really great names as well. So if you're one of these people who just thinks it's all just people singing boom shalalang and like la 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 and silly costumes, give it a chance in more recent years. Wait until next year's one and join the fun of watching. And feel free, whenever you do, to follow my tweets on social media as I'm watching it, as I draw reference to what's going on screen, sometimes in a positive way, sometimes in a jokey way, sometimes just whatever's come off the top of my mind.
Which is why I was late to recordings this morning, because I was late up and I was reading Andy's Eurovision tweets and I was going, oh, it's time to record.
Last night's show. Now, for years, you see people saying it's pointless taking part in it because it's all political. The UK will never score any points because everyone hates the UK. And last year, we got the famous nil point, which was the first time in UK history that they've scored nothing. But this year, the UK entry from Sam Ryder actually was a good entry, because past 10 years, every entry from the UK, I will say here and now, were garbage. They were not put in there to win. And I think it's a deliberate tactic, because if you win, you have to host the next year, and that will cost. So rather than risking having to host it, we've deliberately sent trash along. This year, we sent someone who almost won, because Sam Ryder's song, Spaceman, was a belter. And Sam Ryder himself is filled with charm. He's such a great spokesman for our country and spokesman for music in our country. And we came second. Why did we come second? Because the Ukraine won. Now, you could argue that obviously Ukraine was going to win because everyone's supporting Ukraine at the moment because of the situation over there. And it was a great little bit of positivity that the rest of Europe unites around Ukraine. And I would have argued that, except the Ukraine entry was actually a belter of a track as well. So it deserved to win. Absolutely marvellous. I had so much fun watching last night. The Rasmus turned up to do an entry. The Rasmus, remember them? They're still going. There's a group called Subwoofer who gave us a nice fun track called Give the Wolf a Banana, which that's got added straight into my Spotify playlist. There was the fun, jokey ones. There was the serious ones. There was a lot of ballads last night, which I think is reflective of the times that we're living in, that people are reflective about things, and a ballad does that reflective thing. But it's an enjoyment. From 8 o'clock till midnight once a year on a Saturday, I book the night off work just to sit at home and watch Eurovision. And I love it. So that is my neat thing. Eurovision is a neat thing. If you've never listened to the music, go onto Spotify. You can find all the playlists for the tracks, and you'll find that it's not what you think it is.
I didn't get a chance to see it. We were gigging, as I said right at the beginning of the show last night, and my other half was listening to it on the way home, so she'd got it on Radio 2, and we got home just in time for the results. And I think you're absolutely spot on, Andy. Sometimes it is political about England, but last year's was an appalling song, and it didn't deserve any points. And from having heard this year's, it deserved to do very well, and it did on its own merits. But of course, I know it was a foregone conclusion that Ukraine were going to win, and that's what music is about. It's if you want to close continental divides, music's always the best way, because it is the international language. So well done
us all together
to UK. Not often you can say that ever. Yeah. Right. My neat thing is, I think I mentioned this on a previous one, so I'm going to broaden it out. Apple TV Plus, we talk about an awful lot. Boy, while they don't have the quantity, they certainly have the quality. Ted Lasso, that Andy, in fact, got me into, and is one of my all-time favourite shows. I think it's an absolutely beautiful show. There have been stuff like The Foundation. We've got the series that started just this week, The Essex Serpent, which looks really, really interesting. But the other day, I finished the run on Severance, the show directed by Ben Stiller, which is part Charlie Kaufman, Stanley Kubrick, Wes Anderson. Andy mentioned The Prisoner earlier. But the last episode was absolutely, as Stephen King himself said, one of the most interesting hours of television that you're ever going to watch. So if you've not seen the series, where to start? You could say it's science fiction. You could say it's a black comedy. You could say psychological thriller. And you'd be right on all of those. It has so many subgenres. It could be about a warning of the workplace and an intrusion into your life. But it is just a unique piece of storytelling. So where to begin? Adam Scott plays Mark, who works for an organization where the office workers' memories are surgically divided between their work life and their personal lives, their outside lives. You don't remember your life as a worker, and you don't remember your life outside of that. It's been a phenomenal series. It's been a slow build. It's been visually stunning. I mean, I don't think I can name a series that looks like this. It's got a great cast. Adam Scott, as I said, Britt Lower, who I don't know, who has been phenomenal, Patricia Arquette, John Turturro, the ever excellent, and you have to say it, the great Christopher Walken, playing the kind of role that you don't expect Christopher Walken to play. The series ended on a cliffhanger, and what a cliffhanger. I didn't think they could do a second series to this. Boy, was I ever wrong. So I think Stephen King and I are both correct in this. This is a great hour of one of the most imaginative TV series I think I've ever seen. So my neat thing is Severance, and especially the last episode.
I'm halfway through the series at the moment, so I'm looking forward to getting towards the end. It's like you say, Apple TV Plus, quality over quantity. And I've also started watching, it came out last year, Schmigadoon.
Oh yeah, I've heard great things about that.
I wasn't sure when I read up the synopsis, but within 5 minutes, I was laughing like a loon. It's brilliant. It's so much fun, especially if you've got a love of like your 1940s and 50s musicals. There's so much joy to be had with it mocking the approaches that those films used to have.
I mean, we both talked about The After Party, and my other previous neat thing was Slow Horses, which again is one of the best hour-long series I've seen in an awful long time. So we know that Apple has all the money. If you want to sponsor the show, please get in touch. But it is it. I mean, they're just doing some phenomenal work. You know, it is quality TV. There's not huge amounts of it. It's not saturated like Netflix. When something lands, it just has that sense of gravitas. It's almost a cross between HBO, BBC Two, and Channel 4 of old. I think, it's doing some sterling work. Anyway, enough of that, because it's time to say farewell. As Andy moves on to different things over the next week, we'll bring you a new show next week, but it's going to be an interesting ride for the next couple of weeks, so stay with us. And please, 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 we implore you to spread the word, bring people on board, become part of the Film File family. Andy, good luck with your move down to Banbury.
Thank you.
I'm sure it'll all go well. You'll do a sterling job.
Yep. It's going to be. I'll be giving some reports on upcoming shows as to how the cinema's running. And if you're in the Banbury area and you listen to the show, pop into the new cinema when it opens and ask for me.
And we'll be saying hello, Banbury. But for now, we'll see you later. For Andy, when it comes to emotions, even great heroes can be idiots.